Trey here with Straight Head Samples, here with La Clarinette En Rose, which is our newest library in our new standard series of instruments. This will be a fairly in-depth overview showing all the functionality and getting to hear it play. A lot of the controls are the same as our previous libraries, Birth of the Trumpet, Tenor Colossus, and Eminent Trombone. But there are a few new things and some things specific to the clarinet. So yeah, without further ado, let's take a look. So we've got Clarinette En Rose loaded here. So I think the first thing you'll notice about this instrument is the massive range. So we've got over 3 octaves. So what's so beautiful about the clarinet is it has these different tessituras, the tremolo register in the low end, and the clarino, and in the higher end, it's almost like you have multiple instruments. So it's just a very wide range. And the other thing about talking about range would be the dynamic range. So clarinet is kind of famous for being able to play insanely quiet. And all the way up to a growl. So in regards to the growl, the clarinet was one specifically that we felt like hadn't really been done in this kind of jazz style. It's always been clarinet, classical kind of style libraries, and we thought that high-end growl on the clarinet is such a ubiquitous sound in jazz when it comes to the clarinet. So, and this has come up before with the sax, tenor colossus, and trying to figure out a way to deal with the growl. I didn't want to just do what some other libraries would do, which is just, you have all the articulations and they just give you a sustain patch with a growl. To me, that's not particularly useful unless you can connect the notes together, right? Just having a one growl long note isn't helpful at all. So I thought if we were going to do it, we should do the whole thing. So basically, and that's what we did with this, the top velocity is all growled. So every articulation in a growl. And so all the smart delay, all the matrix, massive matrix of notes that it chooses from is all in a growl. So we're pretty excited about that. It turned out really great, and I think it's really fun to play. And I'll show you some more of that when we get into smart delay. Next would be, we'll just stay in real time, and I can just go through the articulations here. So obviously you have legato. Let's bring it back down to earth. And again, I'll demonstrate a lot of this in smart delay after so you can hear the improvements. But just to quickly kind of go through, and then we have our staccatos. Staccatissimo, which is kind of slightly shorter. Then your tongued articulation doesn't really change in real time. I'll show it to you in smart delay so you can kind of see how that works. You have Fortepianos. All the way down. Super quiet. We got half-step trills. Whole step trills. Falls. So there's a ton of different falls in this, as in the previous libraries. And this one has even a couple more. In real time, I can show you that just a regular fall, if I play it soft, you get a lip fall. So just a little embouchure change at the end of the note. If you hit the key harder, turn up the velocity, you get keys. So that's just a kind of a quick way. You can get a kind of a different sound there, and when we put it in smart delay, there's even more extra goodies that come out. And you've got long falls, Like at the end of the tune, we got scoops, so we got tons of scoops. And I'll show you some more in Smart Delay. Deutz. Classic. Flops. Sometimes these sound better with the short. And then rips are the opposite. And then runs are similar, but it's kind of a scale into the note, or you can treat it as a standard glissando. So play one note, hit the key switch, play the next note, it'll play gliss. So for example, let's play long notes. So note, key switch, next note. So a traditional kind of glissando. You have half step bends. And then our two new key switches, which are a crescendo, just a crescendo to loud, and then a sort of a tongue stop, and then a hairpin, which is up and down dynamically. So crescendos sound like this. And then hairpins are. So those are a couple of new ones, and I'll show you a little bit more at the end. We can talk about those. So if we go to the display panel here, we got a lot of the same. Most of the controls are very similar to the previous ones, the previous libraries. Hard velocity equals long scoop. This is our scoop situation where it gives us that. We'll go over here. There's a speed knob we can adjust. Obviously vibrato on and off. In classical music, obviously clarinets don't hardly ever play with vibrato. They basically play straight tone all the time. So the vibratos gives it a lot of more of a jazz feel. You got your velocity stock trigger, which basically means you can be playing legato, and when you play hard notes, it'll play staccato. That's the idea. Kind of not necessarily because of Smart Delay, but it's a nice thing. Some people like it. On the sound panel here, you've got your reverb. We've got our close room and bleed mics again. On this one, because of the nature of the way we had to record it, the room and the bleed are custom convolution verbs. So you can hear the room mic is really great. It really gives a lot of. Both of these give a really interesting sound. You know, I've mentioned before, I like having the bleed on a little bit and panning it hard. In a mix, it does really cool things with setting the instrument in the space, and it's just a very cool sound. So that's basically that. And then on the control panel, we've got this sort of deeper control. So Smart Delay key switch select. So there's a key here for turning the Smart Delay on and off. This sets which key it is. I like it here at 96. In real time, so the long scoop speed, this is what we were talking about earlier. So if I play the scoop, and it kind of takes a while, so depending on the tempo of the track, you might want to speed it up. So that speeds it up quite a bit, and you can find the right where you want it to land, depending on how it sits in the. And we added that from imminent trombone, and we added it to tenor colossus. Then in real time, you've got legato speed and legato crossfade. These are kind of just standard legato transition controls. You don't probably need to mess with them, but if you're finding that it's feeling lazy, and you're playing very fast, you might tighten this up. Or if you want it to be a little smoother at a slow speeds, you can maybe make it a little longer. Then you've got the vibrato, right? So that's a big sound for jazz with clarinet. So in real time, we've got the weight. So just to talk about the difference here between these two vibrato timing controls. You have the real-time control, which basically says you're going to wait 61 milliseconds before starting the vibrato. But the way players really play, we developed this thing called terminal vibrato, which we introduced on Birth of the Trumpet, which basically adds the vibrato from the end of the note. So you kind of have imagine this is any old note. And how close to the end of the note does the player start to play? I like it kind of almost right at the end. If I play a little phrase here, you can hear it just a little bit. But if I bring it forward, it'll start a lot sooner. So that's something you can play with. Clarinet actually in jazz tends to have a lot more vibrato, so you could live with it being a little up and having the amount up a little bit. I think I still kind of like it just a little color at the end of the note. And the last control here, when you're in smart delay, it's off when you're in real time, but in smart delay, the swing accent is a really powerful knob. It's pretty simple. It's basically going to increase the amount of accents and sort of ghosting of notes that happens when players play. If you have it off and I was to play a phrase, so with smart delay on, all the notes are pretty even. Now, the players that really played the recording, they are adding some of that in, but we had them be on the light side as far as how much they were accenting things. But if I turn swing accent and just crank it so you can hear. So you can hear it's the higher notes, it's really accenting, and the softer notes, it's kind of de-emphasizing. With swing accent off, it's not that way, and it depends on the style of the music. But you know, it can really add a good amount of vibe. It just does some kind of magical stuff. So that's a very cool control there. I think next let me just play a basic phrase, and let's go back to real time. I'll just play something in, and then we can look at the articulations and show you how they affect the sound in smart delay. So I'll just... Okay, so that's just a simple little swing phrase. We'll turn smart delay on, and just as a reminder, this comes on to remind you to move your MIDI region back 4 beats. In our case right now, we don't have any. If we had drums and bass and stuff we were syncing it with, we would need to move it back, but it doesn't really matter. You can also tell this, don't remind me of this again, and it won't come back. Okay, so here's our basic phrase. I'm gonna quantize it. And just kind of, sometimes I just make sure we got overlapping stuff. Yeah, it looks pretty good. So let's just hear it in smart delay. Nice. Put some mod wheel in here. So just that is pretty good. So the first thing, so we're in legato by default. I'll go ahead and put that, our key switches are here. So this C is our legato. So I think the first thing you'll notice is that the short notes are happening automatically. This has been the way in all the new standard series instruments, but just to reiterate it here, the ends of phrases, you know, where you would normally need to boo-da, change that to a staccato. Because of the smart delay, it's analyzing what you're playing. It's changing all those to staccato. So this note, the ends of any phrases, and then any notes by themselves, it plays short. Let's listen again, and you can hear how it's doing that. Right, so no key switches, but all that happened. So it already sounds pretty good. So, but I'll just go through a few things and kind of show you some things I might try. So if you want to add some more variation, or for some reason you get a staccato you don't like, you can always add a key switch, the C sharp or the D, staccato or staccatissimo. If you were to have a bunch of staccatos in a row, especially on the same pitch, you would definitely want this because you get more round robins with the key switch than you do just leaving it on legato. So if I had a bunch back to back, I would definitely switch it over. And then, so the next thing would be tongued. So sometimes, what do you think? This phrase right here might benefit. If I got rid of this, right? If I got rid of this, sometimes tongued. Basically, what the tongued articulation is every note is not as slurred and it's getting more of an attack, and it depends on the style. But in this instance, I might use it on this because this has these longer phrases. Just check out the difference between legato and tongued. So here's tongued. Let me just move this over. So everything just has a little bit more of an attack. If I play legato, everything is slurred. Right. Maybe for this phrase, I probably wouldn't use it, but for more like accented stuff, louder phrases where I really want it more punchy, the tongued articulation actually sounds really great. In this style, maybe not so much, but it is a very powerful articulation, so don't overlook it. And then, so the next would be fortepiano. So if I have this note long, a lot of times on longer notes in a swing phrase or even like funk or pop, the longer notes, especially in a sea of eighth notes, it's going to benefit from a little bit of a harder tack. So this fortepiano, the E key switch here, on this longer note, I think it's going to be better. Let's see how it sounds. Yeah, so you see it just had a little, if I take that away, mute that key switch, you can hear it's good, but fine, but this is better, just a little accent. And a lot of times if you're leaping to a note or leaping away from a note, like way down or way up, way high, a fortepiano can be really nice. And it doesn't always get all the way down to piano. If you're at a higher dynamic, it just kind of stings it. So across any dynamic, that articulation works really well. So next is falls. And so there's a bunch of different ways these work, which I alluded to. And there's another video that talks about this in depth, but I'll just give the quick version. So maybe the most obvious would be to just put it on this last note here. Right, so, and the reminder that if you play a harder velocity, it's going to play a fingered fall. And a lighter velocity plays a lip fall, like an embouchure change. So that's kind of a cool thing you can do. And the other spot to try falls would be in the middle of phrases, right? So we talked a little bit about that on the last library, but I might, like if I was to put one here, so you wouldn't maybe think to put it on the inner notes, but so if I put one on this note and this note, something about when it's about to descend, it sounds pretty cool. So check it out. This is with inner falls. So you can see it just gives it a little life. That's pretty cool. Yeah, so scoops is similar. So we have our long falls too, right? You could just play the crazy end of the tune. Probably overkill. So scoops is similar. There's a lot of different scoops. I might try on this one. Let's see what our thing is. So this is kind of cool. So that same note that I put that fortepiano on, let me put this long scoop. Okay, yeah, I gotta make it harder. So the hard velocities for the scoop. Right, so that was a good example because it didn't quite make it. So there was scooping, but it just sounded like a half step. If I turn the speed up, so that's very cool. So you can use, you can adjust the speed if you want it to not quite make it. Sometimes that sounds cool to not quite make it. like almost like just a bend, like a just playing the note a little flat is kind of cool. So you can mess with that. And then, you know, you could add a scoop at the beginning of a phrase, maybe like just the very first note. So that's cool. Just a little articulation on the top. So lots of cool places you could put scoops. Okay, so then another option. So then maybe, so we have our effects, doits and rips and stuff. I think we'll skip those. We know what those do. So a little gliss. So there's two ways the glisses work in Smart Delay. There's the run, which I call it a run. Basically, if I did it into this first note, so this D key switch is our run, our gliss. One of the many benefits of Smart Delay is that you can have the note be where you want and then have the gliss play before it. So it knows how long it takes to play the gliss and it still lands right on the beat. So we've added this D key switch. It's just going to do a little gliss up into that note. Turn that back up. So that's pretty cool. So back in the day when you had to like adjust this, like find the perfect spot where it makes it land where you want it to. Now you just put the note where you want and say gliss into it, and it figures it out and does it in the right spot. You could also do like more of a traditional gliss, which might be like from the last note to here. So like just if you play the note, play the gliss key switch and the ending. Let's try this. I gotta get the legato. Here we go. So there you go. So build up. So instead of just short, there's a run to it. So again, I didn't have to adjust this or nudge this around so it lands where I want it. You just play the note you're coming from, play the gliss key switch and the note you're going to, and it plays it perfectly in time. One more time. And so yeah, that's kind of you know the main chunk of those articulations. Maybe I'll just show the new ones. It doesn't really make sense in this piece, but just so you can hear what they sound like. Maybe I'll show you this crescendo. So crescendo sounds like this. And you can see in Smart Delay, it basically assumes if you play it longer than kind of in this world, it assumes you want it to be a bar length. So it syncs it to the bar. Basically, it goes and finds, and that's the same for the hairpin. It finds one that's pretty close to that tempo and stretches it a little bit. If you play it slower than that, it will actually play at the correct length. So you can see this will play. And then same for hairpins. So you can watch it. So if you play a slower one or you're at a slower tempo, which you're more likely going to be using those kind of articulations at a slow kind of ballad or film score kind of suspense kind of thing. If you use it in that context, it'll sync it to however long you play it or a bar, whichever one. The other thing I wanted to show, just since we talked about it, was the growl. So again, you know, we sampled everything in a growl. So all those articulations we're talking about. So you can basically have this going and just crank it up. And so we'll have this maybe gradually get into a growl, and the ending will be a growl. So let's listen to it one time, starting kind of where we were, and then increasing the dynamics to a growl so we can hear it. Yeah, so pretty cool and a lot of fun to play with that. So that is La Clarinette En Rose. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.